And we're live. Wonderful, wonderful. Let's get this train a rolling. It is, yes, that is the correct date. Good. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday, June 18th, 2021. Today, we're talking about Beat Studio Buds plus all of the latest news and rumors because this is the iMore show. Joining me, as always, is iMore contributor Karen Freeman. Hey, Karen.
Hello.
And joining us today as our special guest is iMore writer Luke Filipovich. Hey, Luke.
Hey there. Thanks for having me back.
All right. Always good to have you. All right. This is a bit of a lighter news week with the high octane week that was WWDC 2021. We have now moved into sort of the summer beta season. Everyone is against advice installing all of their betas on their main devices, me included. Do as I say, not as I do, people. Just this is important. I've installed iOS 15, iPadOS 15, and watchOS 8. Luke, have you installed all of those plus macOS Monterey?
Yeah, I think I got them all except for TV. TV is the only thing I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of people. And actually, Luke, you're talking to us from macOS Monterey, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm running it on my MacBook Air, my 2018 MacBook Air. And yeah, it's been going pretty good so far. I mean, you're always a little worried when you start installing developer betas. You're always a little worried that things might go awry, but surprisingly, been pretty stable, at least in my experience, which is good. Yeah, and I'm still kind of really like diving into some of the minute changes that they've made. So there's still more stuff to explore, but it's been a pretty cool update so far.
What's your favorite part of it so far?
Okay, it's gonna sound really, really silly, but I kind of like, so in Safari now, when you have a Safari window, if like I don't exactly know what does it, but I think it's like if there's like the website has a color, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. The window turns that color. So like when you go to iMore in Safari, it's all yellow, which I love. It's so cool. And now I get sad when websites don't do it.
Well, I'll bet that websites will update themselves so that they can take advantage of that feature. Because I saw that in the key. It does look really cool.
So what's really interesting about that, Luke, it's fun that you bring that up because yesterday or Wednesday, I can't exactly remember when, I think it might have been yesterday, but Apple released the latest version of its Safari technology preview, which is sort of like the beta version of Safari. And you can get it on Big Sur, and you can get it on, if you have it, you can get it on macOS Monterey, the beta. And this brings, for Big Sur users, because I'm still on Big Sur, I'm not on Monterey, it brings that new style. It brings the new tab style. It brings the color takeover. And so if you want to experience this for yourself and you don't want to install the Monterey beta on a primary machine yet, check out the Safari technology preview because it is fascinating. I don't hate the new tabs the way that a lot of people do. I think, Luke, you and I have discussed this. I think you're right that the lack of the prominent reload button is an issue.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. Like, and I find it weird, a bit of a weird move for Apple. So like people who know this, like in Big Sur or previous Macs in Safari, you had a little reload button on the side of the URL bar, right? The search bar / URL bar. There was a little reload button. It's still technically there, but it's technically now behind like a 3-dot menu. So you have to click on the 3-dot menu and then click reload. Now, of course, us techies know you can use Command R to refresh on any page you want, which is like the prominent way I usually do refresh. But one thing that I find kind of interesting about like putting it behind a 3-dot button is like 3-dot menus aren't typically user friendly when you think about people being accessible and technology being accessible to everyone, and especially maybe older generations who struggle using newer technology. A 3-dot button or a 3-dot menu gives you very little information about what's behind that menu. Pretty much gives you no information, and it's not going to be super self-explanatory. In fact, my dad was when we were moving a few things here on the weekend. I had my dad come over to help me with a couple things that I had left to get back into my new apartment. And I got him to look up something on the computer, and then I was telling him to refresh the page, and he like couldn't do it. Like my dad is my dad's very much not a like technology forward kind of guy, and I thought that was interesting because like he uses a Windows laptop at home, but he's used Mac stuff before with me and whatnot, and he was like, "Oh, the refresh button's gone. Where does it go?"
Yeah,
and I had to be like,
"That's a bad change." I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up changing it back because of the outcry.
So I wouldn't be. First of all, I wouldn't be surprised if they did eventually add a reload button, just like all the way to the left or to the right. But another solution that they could adopt is they could put the reload button next to the 3-dot menu. On the bar, and it just expands with the bar, and you just reload that bar. The question I had for you, Luke, since you've got it open, obviously don't do it on the live stream page you're on right now, but does Safari and Mac OS have a pull to refresh? Because on iPad OS and iOS it does, and that's how you reload and refresh a page.
Yeah, no, not as far as I can know. It's just like behind that button as far as I can tell.
Pull to refresh is super awkward on a Mac, though.
That's true, but it's also like right there. The multiple solutions for a problem are always welcome, and in this case,
I don't think it's not intuitive though.
No, not on a Mac, certainly.
No, and I just find it interesting that Apple, like, Apple's kind of always been lauded for, like people used to say, if you have to give your grandma a phone, give them, don't give them an Android, give them an iPhone, because it's going to be way more user friendly, and it just kind of like it, a lot of the UI makes a lot of sense. I think Apple's put a lot of care into that, and I think like it seems like such a small decision. I know that there's a lot of people probably like screaming in the comments now, being like, "You can just Command R. Why is this a problem?" And it's
it is a problem. It's a hugely unuser friendly move.
And I found it, it's very surprising. So I'm a little sad to see that too. And honestly, like although it's more intuitive on an iPhone or an iPad to pull down to refresh, I still think that I still feel like, I don't understand why they didn't keep the button. I kind of agree with Joe. Like throw the button up right beside the 3-dot menu and just call it a day,
Yeah.
Now on iPhone, it makes a little more sense to me just because you do have your space is a lot more limited.
Yeah, for sure. But like on a Mac, like limited space shouldn't be a concern,
Right. And I mean, pulling to refresh on a phone makes sense. It just doesn't make any sense on a computer.
Just like swipe the new tab swipe up feature and swiping through your available tabs on an iPhone makes sense the way it wouldn't on, say, especially since like on iPhone and iPad or Mac and iPad, you have your tabs right there at the top. So that obviously that would make sense. But yeah, if they could just bring that one, especially on iPad and Mac, it's literally no more space.
It's so tiny.
It's very tiny. It's very little.
Yeah.
So yeah, Karen, have you installed any betas yet?
No betas for me. I'm taking your advice.
Yeah.
I only have primary machines. I don't have extra of anything that I could test it on.
Are you generally someone that waits until the actual public release, or are you going to jump on board, say, when the public betas launch next
I'll
month?
probably jump on the public beta, because I figure if something goes wrong and I'm on the public beta and I need to go to the Apple Store, it's not as embarrassing as if I were on a developer beta. I've done developer betas in the past, and I've actually never had any problems. But I don't want to deal with it. So I'll wait for the public beta though, because I do like to have it a little early. Because I'm going to end up being tech support for my family when everybody actually does their updates in the fall. So I better be prepared.
As long as I have been covering WWDC for iMore, I have been putting beta 1 on a primary device the way I shouldn't. And the only time that has really been an actual problem was the first time I did it, and I didn't learn my lesson. It was iOS 7 back in 2013, and I don't know. It was on I want to say an iPhone, was it a 5S or no? It was a 4S, which that explains everything. And it was just a janky experience for the first beta or two, and then since then I've had no catastrophic issues except with one beta, and it was a watch OS beta like the first year they started doing.
Well, and the watch betas, like if that breaks your watch, you're totally screwed. Like you can't undo it like you can on other
It would
devices.
be less of a problem if you could reliably manually back up your Apple Watch to your iPhone.
No.
But right now the only way to do that, I think still, what are we 5-6 years on, is unpairing the watch. That creates a backup. But no, I just when they're both on a charger, just back up the watch to my iPhone. Come on, man. Just do it. It's right there. I've said this before. I've got that Belkin like three device tree
The
charger.
thing with the antlers.
Yeah. I call it the Yggdrasil of charging. And the phone sits on the MagSafe thing. The Apple Watch sits on the Apple Watch connector. They're literally right next to each other. They're right there, and just do it then. Just do it then, like you do with an iCloud backup when the phone is charging and when 24 hours have passed. The phone does the iCloud backup. Do a similar backup from the Apple Watch to the phone when, say, even if just both are charging. It can be done.
Yeah. The betas. I guess I've been putting them on my main-ish devices. Although I do have some backup devices in case something went catastrophically wrong. But I've been kind of putting them on my daily drivers for a couple years now, I guess. And I guess I always forget if it was iOS 12 or iOS 13. Which one was like the super unstable build? There was one kind of recently that was.
It was iOS 13. I think iOS 13 was one that really, I feel like it started pretty well, and then it just kept getting worse in terms of stability.
Yeah, and I remember the developer beta experience for iOS 13 was like a little rocky. It wasn't that bad, but I remember there was a couple times where my Mac just like kind of froze up, and I had to like deal with that and things like that. But I've experienced nothing like that on macOS Monterey so far. But before everyone goes and downloads all their stuff just because I'm talking good about it, let me tell you, like Joe said, iOS 13 started off pretty stable, and then as they started updating it with other things, it got worse and worse.
Really started adding features.
Yeah,
that were supposed to be in the operating system.
So just because the beta 1 is useful doesn't mean beta 2 won't come along and screw it all up. So
and if you'll remember, this is another reason to be careful for betas. So I'm pretty sure it was iOS 13 was the one where iOS 13.1 was out in beta form before iOS 13 even launched.
Yeah.
And I think that, and so there is a time to get off. There is a time, maybe early September, to remove that beta profile from your device if you're planning on upgrading to a new iPhone. And it's so your data can transfer properly.
Yeah.
This is an issue I ran into, I think, with my new iPad Pro. Yeah, when I was on the iPadOS 14.7 beta on my old iPad, and this iPad ships with iOS 14.6. So I had to activate it, update it to the beta, restore it, and then restore it from a backup.
Yeah. Quite a few steps.
Yeah, it's a hassle. All right. So let's talk news of the week. The big news of the week, actually, like I said before, is a little bit of a quiet week, but we did have a small/big announcement from Beats early in the week. Beats Studio Buds, the not at all secret, completely.
I was going to say, like, worst kept secret ever.
The worst kept secret in music. Worst kept secret in music hardware 2021. So Beats formally announced the Beats Studio Buds, which had been leaked back and forth for a couple of months. Am I imagining that? Or has it just been weeks? In any case, they come in black, white, and red. You can order them now. They'll start arriving on doorsteps next Friday, so a week from today, and they're $149, which is pretty good price. Now it should be noted that these are missing some features. People have been comparing these to the AirPods Pro, which we did that. We compared them to the AirPods Pro.
Yeah.
And
I don't think that's really a fair comparison because they lack the one thing that I really like about Apple's headphones in general is that you can switch seamlessly between your devices. Because that's the thing that drives me nuts about third-party headphones, is having to go into my iPhone settings, disconnect the device, then open my iPad, then connect it to that. And it just, with the AirPods Pro, it's just seamless and you just do it. So Beats doesn't have that. So
yeah, that is something I really enjoy about the AirPods. And I feel like, and this was admittedly before I started installing the iOS 15 betas and whatnot on my devices, but like iOS 14.6, 14.7, I feel like that feature specifically was getting really solid. Like it was getting a lot better, and even now, just like a week on, almost 2 weeks on the beta, it is starting to get a little better. It became a little janky with iOS 15 just because beta 1, these things happen. But yeah, it was starting to get really solid just fairly recently. It might have been there was a firmware update at some point in the last couple of months. But yeah, I like that, and yeah, that missing from the Beats Studio Buds make them not. That would make me not so much of an enthusiastic purchaser.
It is a big price difference though. So if that feature doesn't matter to you,
$100.
I was gonna say, I mean, although Beats is owned by Apple, and Apple, it is Apple for all intents and purposes, but they still very much kind of play. They do play sort of, they try to play both sides, and I think like if people have wanted something similar to AirPods for an Android device, this is probably as close as you're kind of going to get. And I'm hearing from our friends over at Android Central that this is actually a very great headset for an Android user. So I think like I agree. Like I actually don't. It's the one part of Apple technology I haven't quite jumped on board yet. I actually don't own a pair of AirPods. I use a lot of different various third-party accessories for me, but there's some people who just don't need that sort of feature, right? Maybe they only have an iPhone, maybe they don't have a Mac or an iPad, so it doesn't matter if it switches or not, right? And then this gives you like a lot of what the AirPods Pro provide, like the ANC, active noise canceling, an IPX4 rating. So if you sweat on them a little bit during like a workout, you're going to be fine. Like it gives you a lot of, and a transparency mode, which is really good for these type of headphones that can like sometimes really block sound from your ears, which isn't always good if you're walking around and when you should be paying attention. So like there's a lot, I think these offer a lot, and especially for that $150 price tag, like about the same price as, normal AirPods. I think it's pretty good. I think it's a pretty good headset for people who don't need or don't want that like super Apple specific, experience that AirPods kind of give you.
Yeah, I agree.
I got to tell you, I like that they're sort of I say sort of stemless. They've just really, what they've done is they've moved the stem up and onto just the side, so they really stick out of your ears. And
as long as it doesn't affect call quality.
That's a good question as to whether or not it does.
I mean, there's been lots of rumors that apparently this form factor, or at least something similar to it, is what the AirPods Pro 2. Sometimes that's hard to say. That's apparently this is a more similar design to apparently what the rumor is that Apple's thinking for that device. So and that's always been my main concern too, is that like the one thing about AirPods, and I mean, I haven't used them personally, but I've heard a lot of people on calls and stuff, is they do sound great. Like you sound great when you're on calls and things. And I know that the Apple has put a lot of work into how those microphones, that hang down kind of a bit beside you, how they work.
Even more work with the new software updates that are going to roll out this fall.
Yeah, so I am curious about if AirPods Pro 2 go, to a more stemless design or a kind of a design like this, like does that affect call quality? Of course, I'm sure Apple will say that it won't, and I'm sure Apple will do everything it can to make it not, but it'll be an interesting thing to see if that's the way they actually do decide to go.
Yeah, I mean, most true wireless earbuds don't have the stems, so there must be a way to make decent. And I have a whole bunch of third-party earbuds, true wireless earbuds that I've tested for various reviews and roundups, and I haven't had any problem with call quality with any of them. So I don't know that it makes that much difference. But then I'm not somebody that's on the phone all day, so. For somebody, I have a friend who's a realtor, and she literally wears one of those like Jawbones all the time, like 100.
Yeah.
It's just always in her ear. I'm like, we're eating lunch. Like, can you take it out of your ear? She's like, no, because if she gets a call from a client, she needs to be able to talk and she needs to be able to be heard and just not have to fumble around. So, I don't know.
So what do we think of the colors? There are some. And I mean, there are only 3. Some people would say there are only 3, but as AirPods users, I would say there's 3 colors.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to have choices, but I mean, I don't like any of the colors personally. I don't wear black, white, or red ever. So, yeah.
I wouldn't mind, say, the option for black AirPods, but red might stick out a little too much.
Yeah,
it looks like your ears are bleeding.
Yeah, I'm a fan. A lot of my I prefer just kind of like a neutral, like dark headphone. Like black is good, gray is fine. Like I prefer that. I'm not a big fan of like white just because I feel like it gets too dirty, especially when you're taking in and out of your ears, and I feel it's more gross looking.
Over time,
I feel like if you're going to be getting, not to be gross about it, but if you're going to be getting ear gunk on your earbuds, it's better that you can see it so that you can clean it off. Whereas if you don't see it and it's just there, it's still there.
Yeah, I clean my headphones pretty often though, especially my in-ear ones. Like I kind of give them a good, because I'm just like, I'm grossed out by that a little bit. That's just me, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
so in that sense, I prefer to have white because then everything's very clear. So oh no, it's time to give them a good.
I have always thought that like a space gray AirPods would be cool. I do think that would be a nice option. I don't know if Apple needs to. I don't know if there's enough of demand if Apple really needs to like offer like, a whole array of colors like iMac colors. But like because I think we've even seen from the iMac. I don't know how many of those colors are actually that popular. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see different colors, even like a rose gold or something that's still fairly neutral, but just still has a little fun touch to it.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, that being said, I am kind of surprised. I mean, and maybe they just haven't done it yet. Maybe this is kind of foreshadowing that there might be a red version of the AirPods Pro 2. But if there is, like, it does give you a good product red tie-in, right? And that's something that, Apple likes to do for a lot of its products, especially further down the line or when it does refreshes or whatnot. So,
it used to be that when Apple named a product Pro, they would make it darker. And we've got it Pro and they're still white.
Yeah.
Mixed messages, Apple.
That's true.
Yeah. Although apparently pros don't like color options, so I guess the ultimate lack of color options is just having one color.
Yeah, but dark isn't a color. Dark gray. I mean, it's not really a color.
No, that's true.
Space gray, something like that.
Yeah, so that is that's Beats Studio Buds. I'm not wild about that name, to be honest.
Yeah, the name is the name's a bit odd. I mean, I guess I understand because like Beats Studio 3, Beats Studio, that's sort of a bit of a naming convention for them for their like higher or like they're more pro kind of version. So like I understand the naming convention, but it is a little clunky. I'll say that.
So one other bit of news I want to touch on that actually is a little bit late breaking. Just before we came on the show, this popped up from our friends over at the fine folks over at Mac Rumors. They've got a statement from YouTube on a feature that's been kind of on and off for iOS over the last year, and that is picture-in-picture on YouTube for iOS. People have been trying to get picture-in-picture on YouTube for a while, and since we got picture-in-picture on iPhone, they've been using youtube.com a little more than the app. And YouTube sent over a statement to Mac rumors that said this, and I want to read this. Picture-in-picture allows users to watch YouTube videos in a small mini player while simultaneously browsing outside of the YouTube app on their mobile device. We're starting to roll out Picture-in-Picture for YouTube Premium members on iOS and plan to launch Picture-in-Picture for all US iOS users as well. So that is exciting. Picture-in-Picture coming to the actual app, the YouTube app for iPhone and iPad. Well,
Nice.
they
So
say
you
iOS.
don't have to have two different devices to surf while you watch.
Oh my God. It's
Yeah.
like, this is sort of,
I've been one of
It's
those people who have definitely used the website since Picture-in-Picture's been a thing, especially on my iPad for sure. I just like haven't even opened the YouTube app because like it's so awesome to be able to do other things while I'm watching, you know, catching up on my tech stories or catching up on my podcasts or whatever heck I'm doing on YouTube these days. But
it's been one of the glaring omissions, right?
Yeah.
Like YouTube not supporting Picture-in-Picture. It's you know, I think it's on the same level of Netflix not supporting the TV app in that, come on guys, just get with the program. But yeah, Picture-in-Picture for YouTube.
That's great.
A bit of a late breaking story, but yeah, I'm actually excited about it the more I think about it. And they say to all US iOS users. Now, of course, it is rolling out, and this is a Google rollout. So I would remind you that check back in 6 weeks to see if it's happened, and then after that, check back in a further 2 months.
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay.
It's me and the long history of my frustration of Google rollout timing. It's an epic I could fill a book with. So let's move on to talking about everyone's favorite topic, antitrust. So this is, there are all these conversations. We've had the Epic trial that was really about the App Store. All these conversations about Apple and antitrust, big tech and antitrust in general. Big tech's under some heat, and Apple isn't included in that particular net. There's a new antitrust law that's out there that is currently under consideration by, let's see, who is this? Yes, the House of Representatives is currently under consideration there. That would effectively prevent Apple from pre-installing any of its own apps onto the iPhone, which, okay.
It's super weird.
Here's the thing. I'm all for fair play. I think it will eventually take a government to get Apple to play or to bring developers, third-party developers, up to a little more parity that they maybe should have on the platform. But to go as far as to say you cannot install any software of your own software on your own platform is ridiculous on its face.
Yeah, it's like telling a retail store that they can't sell their own branded merchandise except for it's in a closet in the back that you have to dig to find.
And you know what? As a lifelong buyer of Kroger branded brand flakes,
Mm-hmm.
I was that idea.
Yeah, and it's so weird. And I agree with you, Joe. I do think it's probably going to take the government stepping in to maybe make some of this antitrust stuff really stick in a way that's going to be meaningful. But this is not the way to do it. It seems odd. Why would anybody, regardless whether it's Android, iPhone, whatever phone, but why would you buy a phone that literally comes with nothing on it?
I know it's Apple's phone.
And here's the question,
right?
How is that antitrust?
Does this include the phone app? Does this include messages? I mean, does this no web browser?
The App Store app?
The App
right,
Store,
exactly. Like the settings, can you not even adjust your settings until you download an app?
Maybe it's just the App Store and you have to download settings.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I mean, obviously, I say obviously, but you never know when it comes to governments. But you would think that it means things like Pages and Keynote and stuff like that, and maybe not so much actual functions of what the device is supposed to do. But even then, there's still lots of people that buy iPhones and don't really download too many third-party apps and use a lot of Apple apps because and that's what they want. That's what they buy the phone for, right? once again, to me, this comes down as like less antitrust and more anti-user than anything.
What really annoys me about this whole effort and the whole discussion around Apple, and yes, I think there's a certain level at which Apple needs to be brought a little bit under control and made to play a little more fairly. However, one of the things I think that gets lost in this discussion is it feels like representatives and senators are mad at their iPhones and mad at they can't do something on their iPhone. Like, there is a certain level of tech illiteracy and an inability to think of longer term consequences. Like, there was a proposal last year to say remove the App Store from Apple's control.
But it's Apple's App Store.
It's Apple's App Store. It's Apple's platform. Now,
Yeah.
I don't agree with every way that Apple runs the iOS ecosystem. Apple definitely seems to think that the iPhone and iPad, to a certain extent, well, yeah, not just a certain extent, but the iPhone and iPad are highly capable appliances and not computers in and of themselves. Where I think they would make the argument that the Mac is a computer, and thus, yes, it is more open because it is a computer. The iPhone is less open because it is an appliance. Now, we can agree and disagree. I disagree. I think it is I think iPhones and iPads are computers, but who gets to say that Apple? Who besides users voting with their wallet? Who gets to say that Apple's wrong on that? And who gets to say that Apple's wrong to treat their products as they want to be treated? The other thing to remember is that Apple doesn't have a majority of the smartphone market first of all, globally, and I don't think they have a majority in any particular territory or country. This is an Android world.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Apple
so
just has the mind share.
would this law apply to all phones on all platforms?
See, this is a good question. I would imagine yes. I would imagine it would not. It doesn't single out Apple, but
And say all those politicians that are tech not so literate, they're going to have a hard time when they buy a phone and there's no apps on it. They're not going to know what to do with it.
yeah, and there's a certain way that apps. It would also require Apple to re-engineer iOS in ways that allow you to say use a third-party app for text messaging, not just like messaging in general, but text and iMessaging in a third-party app, third-party phone apps, third-party browsers. Though that's easier, you can already set a default third-party browser. But yeah, it's
too much. It's too much. It's going too far. It's too far in the extreme.
It is using a scythe on a job that needs a scalpel.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah,
if that did happen, I would imagine that Apple would come up with a way to make it very easy for people to download all of the apps that they normally would be on there just with like a tap. Like, hey, do you want the Apple package? Click during setup, say.
Yeah.
Do you want the Apple package? And if you tap yes, then you get messages and your camera and Safari and all that stuff.
I would imagine it works a lot like like it does in Russia now, where when you set up your iPhone, you get an option. Hey, do you want to install like Yandex and all of these different Russian apps? I would bet it works like that. Also,
how do you know that?
How do I know that?
Yeah.
It just happened like 2 months ago.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
I'm just like, how do you know what's going on in Russia?
Because there's a whole big thing.
Did you make any secret trips over there recently?
No, I
didn't know about.
Not going to Russia. There was a case where the Russian government is now making Apple offer, I think they're all Russian made apps, like on setup. So install these apps on your phone. They're not forcing the apps to be pre-installed.
Okay.
They're forcing Apple to offer the option.
Interesting.
And I think it'd be a little bit like, and I don't think this is the situation with Windows anymore, but after the big Windows antitrust case in the 90s and early 2000s, Microsoft had to put this little sort of applet that gives you at the time, I think, like 5 browser options like Firefox, and there wasn't Chrome at the time they started doing this, but you could just hit a button and it would install that browser.
Yeah.
instead of just, you know, it was Internet Explorer at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Right. I mean, I could see them making Apple do something like what I said. You can download the whole Apple package, or do you want to go through app by app and choose third-party apps?
yeah, I think it makes more sense to mandate like the ability to designate third-party apps for more functions than just email and browser.
Right.
And
That
then,
that I would understand.
and then on startup offer, hey, we've got Safari, but you also have these options, or we
Yeah.
have the music, but we have music, but there's also like Spotify and Tidal and all of these. I would also offer apps that still hook into Apple Music, but deliver a different Apple Music experience. There's one I use called Soar, and it is that's SOOR, and it is a better Apple Music than the built-in music app. Yeah, I think it's just this whole.
I'm all
issue.
about having choices, but just the idea of buying an empty iPhone, it just seems weird.
Yeah, choices and making choices easier, but
yeah.
Yeah, it seems weird and kind of like Joe said, with like, you know, governments not really having the ability or don't seem to have, you know, foresight to look into longer term consequences. And that's because they only live in 4-year cycles, right? Or 2-year cycles.
2-year cycles.
Yeah, for Senate, sorry, I'm used to Canada over here. But yeah, for you guys, like 2-year to 4-year cycles if you're talking presidency. But yeah, like politicians notoriously have a very short mindset because they're always kind of looking forward to the next election, right? So
a lot of them.
Yeah, so like, you know, this antitrust stuff is definitely gaining some traction, which like we've talked about, like there are good reasons for that. But you know, this kind of screams like some, I don't exactly know who, but this kind of seems like some backroom politicians are like, we need to do something so we can say next election we did something.
We held big tech to account.
Yeah, right. So like it sounds more like that move that doesn't really help users at all, which like the whole point of the antitrust stuff is to actually give users more options, not gut the options that they have so that they have to do way more work when they buy technology. That doesn't make any sense.
It feels like, and truly this is happening on both sides of the aisle here in the United States, but it feels
Apple
like
and Android. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Apple and Android. It feels like politicians are using antitrust law in the way that anti-regulation folks would always fear that they would. And it isn't to necessarily to help consumers, but to punish companies. And that, I mean, when you set out to use the law to punish people instead of help people, you will always go wrong.
Yeah.
Always. So I think that it's just, you know, it's a situation that requires more nuance than it's being given, rather than a blanket approach.
Right.
All right. Now let us move on to, I think, happier topics. Rumors. All right. Let's talk iPad mini, because the rumors for this device have been all over the place for the past couple of months. It was going to get a new design, and then no, it was going to keep the old design. But now it seems as though a new design is on the way. We'll see. This comes from John Prosser, which, you know, obligatory of recent failed MacBook Pro rumors fame. But you know what? I'll credit where it's due. He took his lumps. He did, and he's pretty confident in this. And honestly, I am too. It's the way the design is heading. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, John Prosser last weekend published a new rumor in a new leak about what the iPad Mini 6 could look like. And yes, it's supposedly the design we've all been waiting for. It's
the mini iPad Air.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the way to go.
So Karen, I assume you're a fan of this potential design.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to need a new iPad for a while, because I can usually keep them for a long time, but I would definitely consider this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very cute.
It's just like a digital notepad, even.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. He's, Prosser's also saying that there might be, and this might be something I've heard, but that pencil leak that we had earlier in the year might be a pencil specifically meant for the iPad Mini, and with the idea that it's smaller.
Oh, I don't know if I like the idea of having so many pencils.
It's a lot. What if it's essentially an Apple Pencil 2, but it's smaller to fit better on the Mini? Oh man, I don't know.
You mean Apple Pencil 3? We already have.
Well,
two.
yeah. No, it's essentially an Apple Pencil 2, like inside in terms of.
Oh, you mean but small, like actually
just
smaller.
Yeah.
So, but my question is, would it still work with the same devices that the Apple Pencil 2 works with?
Oh, that's the question.
So if it all works, if they all work together, like if you could use a regular size Apple Pencil 2 on the iPad Mini, and you could use the mini size Apple Pencil 2 on the iPad Pro and Air and everything, that's fine if they're completely interchangeable. But if there's like a whole new set of, it'll work with this one and not that one, and this will work with that one and not this one.
So my question about that,
like, let's move towards universality.
I can't see, like, I think eventually there will be an Apple Pencil 3 eventually at some point, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then it won't work on old devices. It'll only work on the new ones, like we've seen with, Apple Pencil 2 and whatever. However, I agree with you, Karen, that like I don't want to see like a mini Apple Pencil that can only work on the Mini. Like, that seems ridiculous. If you want to give people a smaller option for Apple Pencil, especially like on the Mini, I can see why that might be better to have something a little smaller in the hand. But yeah, make it work on everything, right? Like, make it work on everything where it would technically work. Yeah. I don't think that this is going, if this rumor has any weight, if it ends up being true, I don't think, my inclination is that this wouldn't be the Apple Pencil 3. I feel like if they were to launch a brand new Apple Pencil 3, it would be alongside a new iPad Pro, probably, right? Yeah. Because that's the device that takes the most advantage of the Apple Pencil as it can, pretty much. It's kind of like the flagship for the Apple Pencil. It's what the Apple Pencil launched with next to when the iPad Pro came out. So I feel like if it was going to be a truly a completely new Apple Pencil that we're going to see going forward, the Apple Pencil 3, as we've been dubbing it, like that would come with an iPad Pro, and I don't think that would come with this. So I would think that if there is a new smaller Apple Pencil, it is just kind of like an Apple II that's meant to be smaller and easier to use when you're using, a smaller screen like the iPad Mini.
Yeah, but I feel like some people are not going to want a tiny Apple Pencil because of the way it feels in the hand.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
people who use the Apple Pencil, a lot of often, I don't want to generalize, but I would think use it for extended periods of time. Like if you're making art on Procreate, you'll spend hours on a single project, and it could get uncomfortable if the pencil is too small for your hand. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, how big would it be? Like like 4 inches long?
It's a golf pencil.
Right. Oh, and I hate writing with golf pencils. Don't you?
Oh, it's terrible. It's awful. I never do it.
So for like a quick signature or something, like let's say you have a business and you need people to sign documents or something, and you hand them this little pencil, that's fine. But if you're spending hours creating something in Procreate or another one of the art apps, or photos in Lightroom, or I can't see spending hours holding this little tiny golf pencil size stylus.
I would argue, and once again, this is a generalization and it's not for everybody, but like I would argue that most people who are doing that kind of work are probably not doing it on the iPad Mini. You know what I mean?
Right. Although I will say my youngest child is an artist. Actually, they're in art school, learning computer animation, and they have a Wacom tablet for school, and that's what they do their schoolwork on. Yeah. But their personal device is an iPad Mini, and I've offered to get them like different, bigger iPad. And they're like, no. They're 5 feet tall. They have small hands. They like a small iPad, and so the Mini, and so they do like their fun art on the iPad Mini. They have a stylus and everything.
Yeah, but it could be like kind of what you were saying. Like maybe if this is a smaller Apple Pencil, maybe the idea that Apple's trying to go with it is like, oh, this is like more of a stylus for your iPad, Mini
Right.
rather than a full
So-
drawing utensil. Like obviously it would still have all that capability, but like it might not really. They might be trying to sort of target maybe a bit of a different audience, I guess,
So
than
something to
than the regular
consider
side.
So
Yeah.
something to consider here. This, and for those who are listening, I'm holding up my 12.9-inch iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil attached. This is the pencil on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. See how much space on that side it takes up. The
Yeah.
iPad Mini would be much smaller than that. So I think it would really be a matter of this thing can't physically fit on
So
the side
you're
of the
saying that
iPad
so the
Mini.
Apple Pencil, so the iPad Mini would literally be shorter than the Apple Pencil?
Not shorter than the Apple Pencil, but that I would assume that Apple would have the button layout the same way, and the
Right. So there wouldn't be room for the
volume
buttons.
right, the volume
Yeah.
buttons are on the same side as the Apple Pencil charger.
Well, what about just moving all the buttons?
Well, see, that's an option, but I don't know if Apple would take it, especially if they see the iPad Mini as some sort of companion device. I think if you have, and especially if they make, say, a Magic Keyboard for it. So think about this: the iPad Mini with forget the Magic Keyboard, just a keyboard folio, or an attachable keyboard that uses, say, the smart connector. The smart connector is not going to move. They're going to keep the smart connector in the same place because it's Apple and that's what they do. The buttons would then be on the bottom of the device as you turn it into landscape mode to attach it to
Right.
an external keyboard.
Right.
They would
Well-
go into the keyboard is the problem.
Well, I have two thoughts on that.
Mhm.
First of all, Apple could just put all the buttons along the top. There's plenty of room along the top. They could put all, every
Yeah.
single button,
They
all the
could
things.
do that.
The other thing is Apple has never made a mini keyboard.
Yeah.
So I actually used to use an iPad Mini as my primary iPad, and I did have a keyboard that went with it. It was like a Logitech or Zag, one of those, and it worked fine. But I mean, you're typing like this. I mean, it's so tiny, and it's really not. It's not ideal for touch typing. You're not going to work on an iPad Mini.
one might hope.
You can, but I mean, you're just going to be very scrunched together.
So one of the rumors that came out last year about a potential iPad Mini redesign was that it would be a physically similar size device to what it is now, but actually have a bigger screen, like 8.5 inches or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Apple would see that as an opportunity to market it more towards, mobile work, that sort of thing, and maybe they would.
I mean,
Release a keyboard or a folio or something like that.
I mean, almost certainly, if they're going to be revamping the iPad Mini, they're going to have a substantially larger screen because the bezels will be smaller.
Mm-hmm.
But I still don't see Apple marketing it primarily as a work device. I mean, that's what the iPad Pro and to an extent the iPad Air are for.
Yeah.
Even the regular iPad.
And actually, even if you throw out the thought of keyboards at all, the way, if Apple's going to orient it with the even in portrait mode, if Apple's going to orient it with the, let's say, USB-C port on the bottom and the FaceTime camera on the top, think about like a folio case. The hinge is going to be on the side. They don't want to put the hinge on the same side as the buttons because they want the buttons to be exposed all the time, so you can
Right. Okay. So that
closed.
You're right. So then I think all the buttons should go on the top.
Yeah, I think, Karen, I think you've come across the ideal solution, and that's just move the orientation of the buttons on every iPad, all of them, every one of them, especially the Pros that are mostly used in landscape orientation anyway. This, Apple, that's how people are using these devices. No, it's move the camera to the long side that's like the top landscape side when you're in the keyboard, and move the buttons to the left side when it's in landscape mode, and just it's there, so I don't have to reach over the camera, potentially blocking it to turn the volume up and down. I can just go over there, like a normal, it's sort of a normal device, like I would on an iPhone. Like the iPhone, the buttons are placed correctly for how people mostly use it, and that is in portrait orientation. So why not the iPad? Let's just
right.
Although I think it's interesting, I wonder if people would mostly use the iPad in portrait or landscape. I guess it really depends on how they use it, doesn't it? Like if they use it mostly as a video player, landscape. Is it some kind of digital notepad, portrait?
Yeah, that's true. And that's the thing about the iPad is it could be used so many different ways by different people for different purposes. That's why it can be oriented both ways.
Yeah. And that's why Apple should never put Mac OS on an iPad Pro anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all the points you raised, like I kind of understand maybe they are making just a smaller pencil so that it can fit on the side of the device without, interfering with any connectors and or buttons or anything.
And then they all have the same silhouette, except it's bigger or smaller depending on the device.
Yeah. But I just hope that if that is the case, that that's the way they go instead of like, we've said putting all the buttons on the top, which might be more commonsensical, but
we're replacing
if that is the way they go, I do hope that there is like universal that way. Like if somebody just wants to buy the bigger pencil and doesn't care that it doesn't attach to perfectly to the iPad mini, they still could. You know what I mean?
But the question would be, does it attach at all?
Because
it needs to charge and it needs to pair. It's the only way to charge that. There's not.
I forgot about that. Because you don't have an option.
With the Apple Pencil 1, there
that's
was
that's the one I'm rocking. I keep forgetting about the Apple Pencil.
There's a very tiny, and it was still tiny. I imagine it's tinier now, but is it a tiny but interesting little industry of Apple Pencil chargers where you could like plug in a lightning, you could bring your lightning plug into that thing, like, and it'd be like a pen stand.
Yeah.
You'd put the pen tip facing up and the end in the thing, and it would charge. This, you have to charge it on the iPad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So then that actually makes me even more worried that potentially it is going to be a small Apple Pencil that can only be used on the iPad mini.
or maybe Renee finally gets his wish and it also works with iPhone.
Yeah, maybe
even just the iPhone 13 Pro Max.
Yeah. Which won't be called iPhone 13, right?
We don't know. We don't know that what the phone's going to be called. All right, we have one more set of rumors that I want to get to before we close out today. One Apple Watch Series 7 and the other Apple Watch Series 8. So, future Apple Watches. Let's talk. Bloomberg is out with a report this week about both of these devices. So, let's see. Apple Watch Series 7.
Right, because why wait for the Apple Watch 7 to come out before starting with the Apple Watch 8 rumors?
We've gotten to the point where we start with the next year's device rumors, like right after the new device launches. Let's just get a jump on that and just start having rumors for both of them at the same time. We're burning daylight here, people. That's the thing. It's just efficiency. So, and to that efficiency angle, Bloomberg put rumors for both of these devices into one story. So thank you, Gurman. So Mark Gurman is out with a report on Mark Gurman and Debbie Wu, I should say, are out with a report on Bloomberg this week about how the Apple Watch Series 7 will have a faster processor and thinner bezels, and it will also feature ultra wideband support for Find My, and I would assume things like the updated digital car keys feature, which will coming later this year, which will incorporate ultra wideband to unlock your car without you having to tap it or anything like that. Probably not a security risk at all. What? In any case, so this goes along with I think a rumor a leak we had 2 or 3 weeks ago from another one from John Prosser that showed an Apple Watch Series 7 with a more square body, an iPhone or iPad like body, with slightly more rounded edges, and that would almost necessitate thinner bezels on that screen. If the screen's now going to be flat, is it going to be flat? Who knows? Apple knows.
Yeah, that's what it looks like from the mock-ups, but Now, who knows?
One of the sort of, I guess, disappointing notes from these reports is that there have been rumors for a while that Apple's going to include a blood glucose sensor in the Apple Watch Series 7, and now Bloomberg is saying that the tech just isn't there for that.
Yeah, even for the 8. They're saying it's not even there for the 8. I would imagine that would be a difficult thing to do because blood glucose is usually measured by piercing a
The
vein
skin.
and getting some actual blood and testing that. So
Yeah.
I don't know how it could be measured with a watch. But I'm not a scientist, but it does seem like it's a long way off. And the thing is, you can't release that half baked.
No,
It's literally life or death. If somebody is
Mhm.
depending on the Apple Watch to measure their blood glucose, it can't work sort of.
Yeah,
it has
and I mean
to work all the way.
that's something I've always wondered about the blood glucose monitor. I mean, as coming from a family of lots of diabetics in my family, including my mother, who has to poke herself every day and multiple times a day and check and whatnot. I would love it if I could give her an Apple Watch that could prevent her from, or not need her to do that. But like, then if that's becoming, if that's, like Karen said, if that's becoming your main way of checking your blood sugar level, like, and it's not reliable, like Apple is a tech company, they aren't a medical science company, and I mean, they like all of their features, and they have really great features for heart arrhythmias and things like that. They always say, there's always the kind of the legal disclaimer, right, that like this isn't something that you should live and die by, but like blood sugar is something that people live and die by.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that if they do release something like that, they would have to come with heavy disclaimers, like this should not be your primary blood glucose monitoring device. This is only in between your regularly scheduled checks. But if that's the case, then how is it really that helpful? I guess maybe it could possibly detect unexpected dips or rises in blood glucose. I don't know. Maybe we should have we have several people with diabetes on our staff. Maybe we should have them come talk about it. They could talk about,
it's something that our writer Christine, and frequent guest on the podcast, Christine, has talked about a lot, that something she would hope for. And I think one of the things I know she was hoping to do, if this rumor panned out, was test it against actual dedicated monitoring systems.
Right.
Yeah. I would be interested now. Yeah, not even the Series 8. However, the Series 8 is supposed to get a couple of new features that are a little interesting. One of them is a temperature sensor, which that feels a lot more possible than blood glucose, first of all.
You mean to take your temperature?
I imagine so. It's not entirely. Yeah, body temperature sensor. In this, Apple had previously aimed to put a body temperature sensor in this year's model, but that is now more likely to be included in the 2022 update. Yeah. The blood sugar sensor, which would help diabetics monitor their glucose levels, is unlikely to be ready for commercial launch for several more years. Yeah,
that seems. I'm kind of surprising that Apple hasn't already put that in the Apple Watch. Yeah. Those little $20 temperature guns.
Yeah. That feels easier.
Have been out forever.
Maybe it's the app. Maybe I feel like for a lot of things, maybe not blood glucose. I think having light-based blood glucose monitoring is probably a ways off. But I think for a lot of these features that could technically be implemented, now or before now, it's often the app, the software that holds it up. Or it could also be how much space it would take up in the Apple Watch. So they have to prioritize, because they don't want to make the watch bigger and bulkier by adding features that people don't necessarily need all the time. And I would say until a year and a half ago, I never really thought about taking my temperature that much. Now, you say that, but there's this other part of this Series 8 report that I think might lead to a bigger and bulkier Apple Watch. It's a bit of a rumor that's sprung up before, but it's this idea of a extreme sports model, an explorer or adventurer edition of the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch Series 8 is supposedly coming in with a more rugged offering as part of the lineup next year. I don't like that. What's the point? Throw a case on. I mean, there's so many rugged cases out there. Well, who's adventuring 24/7? You know what I mean? You got to dress up sometimes. Well, you don't always want to have this big, Garmin type
thing on your wrist. I don't know. Maybe you do.
Well,
I
yeah, I certainly don't.
don't. For the next time you go mountain climbing, Joe.
Or swimming in a lake, I guess.
But you can swim in a
I
lake
mean,
with a regular Apple Watch.
That's
you don't.
true. Even I think maybe even
It's
this band that I'm
waterproof.
wearing.
Yeah, that's what I'm
It's-
saying.
I mean,
Like,
the Apple
it's-
Watch Series.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say the Apple Watch Series 7, the rumor that we were talking about, does say that the device is expected to be slightly thicker than the Series 6 due to some of the stuff that they're putting in. I was kind of hoping that would mean more battery power, but let's be honest, that's not going to
Yeah,
happen.
probably not.
But
Everything that you add is going to add some thickness until the miniaturization technology improves. So for me, if it's gonna, like, I don't want my Apple Watch any thicker than it is, but if it's gonna get thicker, it better be for a really good reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like more battery.
Honestly, I don't have a problem with the battery in the Apple Watch. That lasts me all day, no problem.
Yeah, that's true. I'm in the same place. But you know that whenever Apple does add more battery these days, it's really going to be about sustaining newer features at the same battery level that we've come to expect.
Right. They're not going to add battery power just for the sake of adding battery power.
No, maybe sometimes to the iPhone. At least that's how they'll pitch it.
I hope.
Come on, Mini.
I mean,
the iPhone Mini needs it.
I don't think asking for battery that lasts through the day is that much to ask.
No. Well, I mean, and we saw a couple weeks ago reports of increased battery capacity on all of this year's iPhones. And the Mini, it got a bump, not
much.
It's really more of a scooch.
I mean, yesterday I put my my iPhone on the charger at, like, it was 1 or 2 in the afternoon because my battery was at 50%, and I had not even been on my phone that much. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
this is a brand new phone. I mean, I bought this phone this fall. It's not like I have a 4-year-old phone or something.
Yeah, it is distressing. That is distressing. But one hopes that Apple strives to make the iPhone battery better, especially.
Yeah.
I do think they add hours to the iPhone more often than they would to other products, except maybe the MacBook Air.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, my MacBook's battery is terrible, by the way.
Yeah.
But I just leave that plugged in.
I think, and that might be why it's constantly plugged in, and so it doesn't have a chance to discharge.
No, I didn't used to keep it plugged in all the time, but
now you do once the battery life got terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We have come down to the end of our hour. I want to thank Luke for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me.
I want to thank all of our live listeners for tuning in and commenting. It's always fun to watch what you guys are saying. I want to thank our later listeners listening after the show is published in their podcatcher of choice. Big thanks to Jim Metzendorf, who edited just an epic number of podcasts last week for WWDC, and who always makes us sound just so wonderful. We gave him a bigger show last time, so big thanks to Jim. And until next time, this has been the iMore Show. Bye, everybody.
Bye.